Something strange has happened in the last 2 or 3 years of video game releases, where the phrase, "there are so many good games coming out," has become commonplace. To the industry's credit, the last 3 years have had some amazing releases, partly due to a lot of games that have been in development for years finally coming out. We've still got DMC5, Kingdom Hearts 3, Spyro Reignited, Smash Ultimate, Resident Evil 2 Remake, Sekiro, and that's just a few of the games coming out in the next 5 months. Release schedules are packed, and that's without counting the yearly regulars that are still releasing. More importantly than game quantity is the length of them. I feel like every week a new giant open world game releases, only to be replaced by a newer one 7 days later. Take any list of best games from between 2008 and 2012, and you'll see a lot fewer giant open world adventures, but check last year and you'll see them dominate top 10s all over the internet. We're talking about a year where The Legend of Zelda was taking lessons from Ubisoft, and Sony were pushing Horizon Zero Dawn like crazy. I was thinking about how many games came out in the last year that I just haven't gotten around to, or games that I've bought and never beaten, and I wanted to look at why. I did play a lot of games to completion, but why was it that I finished some and not others? So I decided to boot up some half-finished games and really try to put my finger on why I never got around to finishing them. And I noticed a bit of a pattern. So let's talk about the games I've beaten, the games I probably never will, and somewhere along the way we might find an explanation as to why. Before we get into games I didn't beat, it's important to have some context of games I did beat, both new and old. I have a tendency to play a lot more older games, mainly because they're cheaper and there's just so many of them. Hell, I only got around to playing the Yakuza series in the last 2 years, and I only beat 5 around the beginning of this year, so I still play a lot of games. However, there were some new big releases that I did beat, like Persona 5 and Nier Automata. I spent almost 120 hours in Persona alone, and Nier ended up more than 45 hours. So I am capable of beating very long games. I distinctly remember back in 2015 when I bought MGS5 and played that for a good 60 hours as well. So why was I able to beat these 3 games? Well, these are special cases where they're all sequels to games that I adore. I played original Nier a bit over a year ago, and I've been a huge fan of Metal Gear and Persona for many years now. So seeing where the stories went is probably what drove me on, especially in the case of Nier and Metal Gear. Was it a good thing that I spent that much time? Well, for Persona 5 I didn't mind spending that much time on it, and while in retrospect I have some issues with it, I can't say that I didn't enjoy polishing off the compendium, even if I just barely missed out on 1 or 2 confidants. Nier, on the other hand, is a bit different. You see, it only took me 25 hours to beat endings A to E, meaning the last 20 hours of my game time were finishing off side quests and farming materials and gold for the secret ending. MGS5 was a similar situation where I spent hours upon hours doing the repeated quests just to get to the extra endings well after the game finished. Did it enhance my experience? Well, to put it simply, no. If I could go back and tell myself not to do 100% of the side quests in Automata, I would do it in a heartbeat. But I know that even if someone told me not to, I wouldn't be able to help it. While I'm not a trophy fiend at all, I do have some completionist tendencies in me, and when I see a checklist, I can't help the urge to fill it out. Hell, I spent hours doing all the fishing side quests in Nier. I've put time into some absolute garbage in my life, but I still did it. The only explanation that I can offer for why I kept playing MGS5 and Automata well after I was done was the promise of something more. Some more story, more answers, and in both cases I was hugely disappointed. MGS5 is well documented with its unfinished ending, but Automata's ending Y was not worth the 20 hours I spent grinding and grinding just to unlock it. While I enjoyed Automata for what it was, had I not spent almost twice as long on it doing a lot of filler stuff, I guarantee I would have enjoyed it so much more. The second half of my time just ended up highlighting all the parts I disliked about the game, like the repetitive combat, farming for rare drops, and rare spawns that had me running back and forth into areas over and over again, hoping to see a golden enemy. So I finished Automata and ended up a bit more lukewarm on it than I was 25 hours in, but I did finish it. What about games that I didn't finish? When I got my Switch day 1, there were no copies of Zelda left in my local area, so after a few days of playing Spectre of Torment and loving it, I decided to pick up Zelda digitally. Now that we're almost 2 years away from the game's release, I think I can happily say that I enjoyed it to a certain extent. I had to since I apparently played it for 50 hours. However, I've never finished Breath of the Wild, and I probably never will. I did 3 of the beasts, about 70 shrines, and a bunch of Korok seeds in those 50 hours. I explored a lot of the map, did a bunch of side quests, and generally enjoyed myself, but as time went on, the game's flaws became more and more obvious to me. The shrines got repetitive, the lack of enemy variety got boring, and I couldn't bring myself to care about the main quest. As the hour count ticked up, my enjoyment was beginning a freefall. Now, this doesn't mean that I hated the game. I did really enjoy my time with it, and I don't think I wasted any of my 50 hours. But near the end, the cracks were starting to show. This sounds like I purposefully dropped the game, but instead something much more interesting happened. The last time I saved in Breath of the Wild was April 3rd, 2017, almost a month after I got the game. The very next day, I picked up Persona 5 on day 1, and that completely took over my life. I remember about 2 or 3 weeks into playing Persona 5, I looked at my Switch and thought to myself, man, I have no desire to pick up Zelda again. After that, I never did. Until I went to record footage for this video, I hadn't played Breath of the Wild in over a year and a half, and I felt no desire to ever go back to it. I barely ever thought about it after the Game of the Years ended, and it fell back into last year's lists. Does that mean I didn't like it? Not at all, it just means I was done with it. I'd gotten my enjoyment out of it and felt I got my money's worth, so I just didn't touch it again. Had it not been for Persona 5, I probably would have kept playing until I got fed up, and I would have ended up with another Automata situation. It was better for me to drop Zelda entirely and remember it more fondly than to fill out all the checklists and end up hating the game. There was another game that gave me a similar feeling, but it's a bit more complicated. When I first saw Horizon Zero Dawn back in 2015, I was super excited for it. I loved the aesthetic, I loved how the combat looked, the setting was really interesting, I was hooked. But with Zelda and Persona 5 just around the corner, I decided to put it off on release and only picked it up once the complete edition came out around Christmas 2017. Maybe it was because of the amount of games I buy in Christmas sales, but I took this one a lot differently to Zelda. Instead of playing 50 hours in a couple of weeks, I only ended up playing about 25 hours, and I was playing it well into April. In those 25 hours though, I had a blast with it. I really enjoyed exploring the world, I climbed all the Ubisoft towers, I got Blazing Suns and all the trials, and I had no reason to really stop. But I did anyway. Somewhere around April of this year, I turned on Horizon for the last time. But this was a different kind of feeling to Zelda. Whenever I think of my Switch, I don't have any desire to turn on Zelda. But every time I turn on my PS4, I remember Horizon fondly. It's been on my get back to list ever since I noticed I stopped playing it, so why don't I just play it? Here's where we get to my theory. Horizon hit that perfect sweet spot for me. At the very end we've got Automata, a game that I spent way too much time on. In the middle we've got Breath of the Wild, a game that I spent a lot of time on in a short period, but don't want to play again. Then we've got Horizon in the sweet spot, a game that I played bits and pieces of over the course of months and still adore. With Automata and Zelda, my problems are clear. I kept playing them well after my enjoyment started to wane, and that affected my opinion of each of them, all because I couldn't just let those checklists go unfilled. With Horizon, I did fill out some of the checklists, but because I stopped after a mere half the time I spent on Zelda, I didn't hit the peak of my enjoyment. When I think of Zelda, I think of different coloured bokoblins and my weapons breaking, and when I think of Automata, I think of running back and forth trying to get a meal to sell me the right materials. But when I think of Horizon, I just think of things like this.
Gotta get under it.
So despite the fact that I want to play Horizon, I don't think that I ever will or should play it again. I got my enjoyment out of it, and pushing it any further will just end up like another Breath of the Wild. Had I bought it day one, I probably wouldn't have been able to just move on so easily, because my wallet would have been €70 lighter, but since I got it on sale, it wasn't that big of a deal. This is why I don't buy new releases, especially not big open world games. Whenever I see someone post a clip from Red Dead 2, I catch myself thinking, man, that game looks cool. I should play it someday, but I know exactly what'll happen. I'll either play way too much of it and end up losing my love near the end, or I'll feel the need to play it because I bought it at full price and end up playing well past my enjoyment. But maybe in a year's time I can pick the game up on a sale, play it for around 20 hours and find myself happy with it. In an ideal world I would have all the time I need to beat each game I buy, but that just isn't viable. And if anyone ever tells you that you have to finish a game, then just remember that you're probably enjoying that game more than they are. I know that this is my problem. I should just ignore the checklists and play the game how I want. But I would probably enjoy the game less knowing that I'm not doing them. Open world games just aren't for me to a certain extent. I'm not reviewing these games. I have no professional reason to play them to 100% completion. And if my choices are between enjoying myself more or beating the game, then you know which one I pick. Hey, thanks for watching all the way through to the end of this video. I hope you're all doing well. I want to start uploading more regularly on this channel, so expect more kind of shorter videos like this while I work on my bigger videos. My next big video will hopefully be around early December, but I plan on putting out 1 or 2 more between now and then. If you want to join the Discord, there's a link in the description. If you want to follow me on Twitter, I'm at cicada_wave, and if you want to follow me on Twitch, I'm at twitch.tv/cicadawave. Thanks again for watching. Let me know in the comments if there's any open world games that you've never gotten around to finish, even though that you feel like you should. Is this just me? Am I the problem here, or does anybody else have this issue? My next video won't be too far away, so I'll see you when I see you.